Okay, so let's talk about Slingshot's light to points. Here I have a terrain, just some simple cliffs, and a grid placed underneath. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some kind of points, which you can see here. If I tick those on, those points have some point normals. We zoom in nice and close, you can see that they will have a normal sticking outwards. That normal is consistent, and all I've done here is a box, unique the points, create some prim normals, promote them up to points via first match, pack the points and transfer the n, and then delete points. And I have this. I've then just given it a really simple set of animations, nothing too complicated, but this is basically just going to bounce back and forth like so. In fact, let's pop that into our z-axis and leave x. So it should. There we go. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to go Slingshot, lighting, lights from points, and what's going to happen here is it's going to load up the menu for lights from points. Now within your Slingshot directory you'll have a JSON file called render engines, and there'll be some information in there that will allow you to set up a render engine if it doesn't currently have support from Slingshot. You just have to kind of copy the parameters and the node types as done for the other render engines that are supported. So we have Mantra, Arnold, Renderman, and Redshift. I'll stick with Mantra for now. I'm going to tell it to link the intensity, exposure, and color, but you can do none. If you just want to have the lights set up for you and want those controls done manually, that's still possible. I'm going to go ahead and hit create, and you'll see here it's popped down this. It's found its way up there. It's popped down this create light points SL node, and it's created this this null here. So if we zoom in on this, we can see we have a bunch of point lights in our scene now, and those lights are over here. We've created a subnet next to our light points geometry node, and that's created a rivet pointing to each unique point in the setup and attached an appropriate light to it. If I select all of these, I'll go ahead and enable the spotlight. Different render engines do this different ways. Some point down the positive Z axis, sorry, and some point down the negative Z. So I'm just going to rotate on Y by 180 degrees for Mantra. And so you can see now that these lights are pinned onto my points as expected. So if I just come out here, select these cliffs, just turn the lighting off for a moment and line this up. And we'll go inside our light points and take a look at this. So this thing has two outputs. If we look at the first output, which is the default that gets viewed here, we'll see that we've got a whole bunch of arrows. If I just hide these, you can see we have these visualizers that are just going to show us how intense our lights are, what the color of them is, and we can use the we can go ahead and change this to be any given attribute we want. So if I want this to be done on the exposure attribute, we can do it. It's not going to change anything at the moment because they're the same value, but I tend to keep this on intensity. So the other output is the outlight pins, and this is what's being referenced by all of the rivet nodes. So this is a really essential null to have that just keeps this easy to trace back up the stream. So without having any further modifications, anything custom, we can come in here and start to modify our lighting. So I'm going to just turn on viewport lighting here and go show all. And at the moment this looks pretty dark, so I'm going to whack this up a fair bit. Like that. Still nothing. Let's go higher on the exposures. Okay, we're getting something there. You can see. Let's make sure this is even higher. And there we go. So once we've set our light values to something that makes sense, this is quite a large model, about a kilometer wide, you can see all of our points are now successfully pointing a light, no matter where it rotates and translates, at our geometry. We can adjust these two values to be a min-max value. These are basically random values for the intensity and exposure. We can change the seed to get different amounts of this onto different lights. If I wanted this to be maybe 10, 250, you can see we get something a little dimmer, and this becomes the range that our lights can have. We can also change the color, so we have a min-max for the color in the RGB channels. So I'll go ahead here and I'm just going to maybe make things a bit more red, I'm going to knock the blue amount back, and you'll see here we've now got a much more red color palette. If I were to knock the red back and maybe increase the blue, you'll see we've got now a much more blue color palette. And this is quite good if you just need random lights, you just want some variation between these lights in your scene. But I think 9 times out of 10 you're going to want control. So this is where this gets a little bit cleverer. The attributes menu over, or tab here, will tell you what has been detected by the incoming geometry. So our incoming geometry has an N and an up attribute. So it's going, okay, we've got those. We're not worried about setting them. So we're just going to keep those as is. But you'll see the intensity, exposure, and color haven't been detected. So that's why these controls are active and these ones aren't. If I want to come in here, and let's say I set this, I'll put down a color node, pop this in here, and you can see already I've set the color up. If I make these say red, you can see the color controls here are going to be ignored. They're just going to disable. So now the color that's incoming is going to be the color that our points use on the lights. The same would go for our intensity and exposure. So if I had some specific pattern I wanted them to follow, I could just say, you know, at intensity equals, let's do a channel float here. So let's say I make this 100. Now they're all 100 and there's no variation. There will still be variation in the exposure, so I can still vary it that way, as you can see. But this is giving me pretty good control over having attributes that I can just come in and measure on whatever I want, or just having something that's good to go and set up and I can just get on with. It's important to note that this doesn't take changing point counts, and that's because the rivet and the lights have to be set up and kind of good to stay in the scene, but it can do everything else frame to frame. So this is Lights to Points. Hope you find it useful. It's available in Slingshot in the full version right now. Hope you enjoy.